Surprise, surprise, look who caught them with their pants down, their masks off, their hands deep in the cookie jar of betrayal. Look who finally has the receipts, the screenshots, the evidence that would make a jury gasp and a judge slam the gavel before the opening statements even finished. Hello to you, the one they thought was too naive to notice, too broken to document, too scared to act. Hello to the beautiful chaos conductor who just flipped the entire chessboard while they were still planning their next move. They got comfortable, didn't they? So comfortable in their deception that they forgot the first rule of war: never underestimate the one you were destroying. They thought you were asleep while they plotted in broad daylight, thought you were blind while they practically live-streamed their betrayal. They got so cocky with their little schemes, their group chats, their synchronized lies, that they forgot one tiny detail. You were never the fool in the story. You were the documentarian. And now here we are at the most delicious part of this tragedy turned comedy. They're scrambling, aren't they? Deleting messages, changing stories, suddenly developing amnesia about conversations that happened yesterday. Their genius plan to destroy you just became evidence exhibit A through Z. The trap they set for you, you turned it into a stage. The grave they dug for your reputation, you transformed it into a monument to their stupidity. See, what they never understood about you is that pain doesn't make you weak. It makes you observant. Betrayal doesn't make you bitter. It makes you strategic. Every lie they told, you cataloged. Every scheme they whispered, you recorded. Every time they smiled in your face while sharpening knives behind your back, you were building a case file that would make the FBI jealous. And the best part? They handed you all the evidence themselves, gift-wrapped with their arrogance. Let's rewind to that beautiful moment when their mask slipped just enough for you to see the monster underneath. Maybe it was a text sent to the wrong person. Maybe it was a conversation you weren't supposed to overhear. Maybe it was that one friend who couldn't keep their mouth shut after 3 drinks. Whatever it was, that was the moment the simulation glitched and showed you the code. That was when you realized you weren't paranoid, you were prophetic. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of confronting them immediately, like they expected, instead of having the emotional breakdown they were counting on, you did something that still keeps them up at night. You went quiet. Not the quiet of defeat, but the quiet of a predator who just spotted prey. You became the silence before the storm, and they mistook it for submission. They thought your silence meant you didn't know. They thought your smile meant you were still fooled. They thought your continued presence meant their plan was working. Little did they know, you had transformed into something far more dangerous than an enemy. You had become a director, and they were unknowingly auditioning for the role of village idiots in the movie of their own downfall. Every day after that moment of revelation, you gave the performance of a lifetime. You played the role they cast you in, the naive one, the trusting one, the one who never saw it coming. And they bought it because their ego wouldn't let them see the truth. That you were 3 steps ahead, recording every confession disguised as casual conversation, screenshotting every digital footprint of their deception. You turned into a ghost in your own life, didn't you? Present, but not really there. Engaging, but not really connected. You became a professional collector of their sins, and they were so busy sinning, they never noticed the camera rolling. They got bold, got sloppy, got comfortable in their cruelty because they thought you were too broken to fight back. But broken things have the sharpest edges, and you were secretly sharpening yours on every lie they told. You discovered skills you didn't know you had, the ability to smile while documenting betrayal, the talent for asking innocent questions that made them reveal everything, the gift of making them feel so secure in their deception that they stopped being careful. You learned their patterns like a scientist studying lab rats. When they lied, how they lied, the specific words they used to manipulate reality. You mapped their entire psychological blueprint while they thought they were mapping yours. You became fluent in their language of deception, while letting them believe you couldn't even speak it. And through it all, you collected screenshots that would make their lawyers sweat, recordings that would make their mothers disappointed, evidence so damning that even their flying monkeys would have to admit defeat. You built an archive of their true nature while they were busy trying to archive you. But here's where you transcended from victim to victor, from player to game designer. Instead of using all that evidence for destruction, instead of going scorched earth like they deserved, you did something so unexpected, so brilliantly twisted, that they still can't process it. You turned their master plan into a meme. You transformed their serious attempt to ruin you into the joke of the century. You took their carefully crafted manipulation and made it funny. You grabbed their gaslighting and turned it into a punchline. You transformed their betrayal into content so absurd that people couldn't help but laugh. Not because the pain wasn't real, but because the audacity of their stupidity deserved nothing more than to be mocked into oblivion. You see, they expected tears, but you gave them laughter. They expected revenge, but you gave them ridicule. They expected you to wage war on their level, but instead you elevated the entire battlefield into a comedy club where they were the unwitting performers. You didn't just expose them, you made them into a cautionary tale wrapped in humor. The memes started flowing, didn't they? Their quotes became Instagram captions for what not to do. Their schemes became TikTok trends about red flags. Their genius plan became the blueprint for every "how to spot a narcissist" post. You didn't just win. You turned their loss into educational content for others who might face the same betrayal. Oh, the panic when they realized what you'd done. When they saw their master plan trending as a joke. When they heard people laughing at what was supposed to be your downfall. They tried damage control, didn't they? Suddenly they were the victims. Suddenly you were the cruel one for misunderstanding their intentions. The gaslighting went into overdrive, but it was too late. They tried to spin the narrative, but you had already turned it into a disco ball. Every angle they tried just reflected more of their ridiculousness. They attempted to rally their troops, but even their most loyal supporters couldn't defend what had become indefensible. They wanted to be taken seriously, but you had already transformed them into the punchline they always were. The private messages started flooding in, the threats disguised as concern, the manipulation dressed as apology, the rage masquerading as reconciliation. They cycled through every tactic in their playbook, not realizing you had already published their playbook as a comedy special. They were trying to play chess, while you had already turned the board into a meme template. And the beautiful irony? The harder they tried to salvage their reputation, the funnier it became. Every defensive post, every attempt to rewrite history, every flying monkey they sent just added another layer to the comedy. They became a self-fulfilling meme, a joke that kept writing itself, a disaster that couldn't stop trending. But you weren't done, were you? Because turning their plan into a joke was just the appetizer. The main course was showing everyone how to do the same. You didn't just defend yourself. You created a template for every person who's ever been targeted by these kinds of manipulators. You turned your pain into a masterclass, your experience into an education. You started sharing the tactics, breaking down their manipulation methods with the humor of a late-night comedy show, but the precision of a psychology professor. You made it safe for others to laugh at their abusers, to see the absurdity in the abuse, to find power in making fun of those who tried to break them. You turned trauma into triumph, but more importantly, you turned it into something teachable. Your comment sections became support groups, disguised as comedy clubs. People started sharing their own stories, their own screenshots, their own evidence of similar betrayals. You created a movement without meaning to. A revolution wrapped in humor, a healing space that looked like a meme page but functioned like group therapy. And that's when they realized the true scope of what you'd done. You didn't just beat them at their own game, you changed the game entirely. You made it impossible for them to use these tactics again because everyone was now in on the joke. You turned their weapons into toys, their strategies into comedy sketches, their entire methodology into content for others to study and laugh at. The ripples started spreading far beyond your original circle. Their other victims started coming forward, emboldened by your approach. People who had been silently suffering suddenly found their voice in humor. The shame that usually accompanies being fooled transformed into shared laughter at the foolishness of the perpetrator. You became a beacon for everyone who'd ever been gaslit into silence. Your memes became permission slips for people to stop taking their abusers seriously. Your approach showed that you don't have to meet darkness with darkness. Sometimes you can just turn on the lights and laugh at what's been hiding there. The copycat memes started appearing. Their tactics became so widely mocked that they became ineffective. Try to gaslight someone now and they'll just share your message with a laughing emoji. Try to manipulate and you'll become the star of someone's TikTok. You didn't just protect yourself, you vaccinated an entire generation against their brand of toxicity. And the most beautiful part? They can't even be mad about it publicly. How do you complain about becoming a meme without confirming that the meme is accurate? How do you defend yourself against humor without looking even more ridiculous? You put them in a checkmate where every move just makes them look worse. Let's talk about why this approach was so devastatingly effective. You understood something they didn't, that power comes not from fear, but from the ability to inspire laughter. You recognize that making someone ridiculous is far more powerful than making them afraid. Fear can be overcome, but being a joke, that's forever. You tapped into the collective exhaustion people feel with manipulators and gave them permission to laugh instead of cry. You transformed the narrative from "look what they did to me" to "look how stupid they looked trying." You shifted the power dynamic so completely that they went from predator to punchline without understanding how it happened. You taught them people actually hurt. You showed them how deep it went and how it feels. And they went. You saved Pat. By making it funny, you made it shareable. By making it memeable, you made it memorable. By making it relatable, you made it revolutionary. You turned your personal victory into a public service, your individual healing into collective empowerment. You proved that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's rendering your enemies too ridiculous to ever be taken seriously again. You also demonstrated advanced emotional intelligence. Instead of letting them drag you into the mud, you turned the mud into a comedy sketch. Instead of meeting their low vibration, you elevated the entire situation into something productive. You showed that healing doesn't have to be heavy. Sometimes it can be hilarious. Now they're stuck in a prison of their own making, aren't they? Every time they try to use their old tactics, someone recognizes it from your memes. Every time they attempt manipulation, someone laughs and screenshots it. They've become walking red flags. Not because you exposed them with anger, but because you exposed them with accuracy wrapped in humor. They can't reinvent themselves because the internet is forever, and you made sure their tactics became part of internet culture. They can't find new victims because you've educated an entire generation on their methods. They can't even complain about it without confirming everything you revealed. You've created their permanent predicament, relevance through ridicule. The best part is watching them try to adapt, watching them attempt new tactics only to have those immediately recognized and memed, watching them try to rebuild their reputation while their entire playbook is being used as a what not to do guide. They've become educators against their will, teaching everyone exactly how not to behave. And you get to watch it all with the satisfaction of someone who didn't just survive, but transformed survival into an art form. You get to see the ripple effects of your courage wrapped in comedy. You get to witness the healing that happens when people realize they can laugh at what once made them cry. But let's talk about who you became through this process. You discovered that you're not just resilient, you're innovative. You learned that your trauma response doesn't have to be traditional. You proved that healing can look like whatever works for you, even if that's turning your pain into the internet's favorite joke. You developed skills you didn't know were possible. The ability to find humor in darkness, the talent for transforming pain into punchlines, the gift of making others feel less alone through laughter. You became a translator, taking the complex language of manipulation and abuse and translating it into something everyone could understand and mock. You also discovered your true power, the ability to not take seriously those who tried to destroy you. You learned that giving someone the gift of your anger is still giving them something. But making them irrelevant through humor, that's taking everything back. You mastered the art of emotional alchemy, turning their lead into your gold. Most importantly, you showed yourself and others that there's no right way to heal. Some people need therapy, some need revenge, but you needed to laugh, and in laughing, you gave others permission to do the same. You proved that sometimes the most revolutionary act is refusing to let those who hurt you have any serious impact on your life. The memes keep evolving, don't they? What started as your personal coping mechanism has become a cultural phenomenon. Their tactics are now so widely mocked that they've become cautionary tales told through TikTok sounds and Twitter threads. You created a new language for discussing manipulation, one that strips it of its power through humor. Support groups now share your memes as icebreakers. Therapists reference your approach as an alternative healing method. People who once felt alone in their experience now have an entire community that speaks in inside jokes about shared trauma. You turned isolation into connection, silence into laughter, victimhood into victory. The academic papers will eventually be written about this phenomenon, how one person's refusal to take their abusers seriously created a shift in how we discuss and process betrayal, how humor became a tool for mass healing, how memes became more effective than traditional exposure in preventing future harm. But you don't need academic validation. You have something better. The messages from strangers saying your approach saved them. The comments from people who learned to laugh at their situation instead of drowning in it. The knowledge that somewhere, someone is screenshotting their manipulator's messages, not with tears, but with anticipation of the meme they are about to create. They wanted to be remembered as the ones who broke you. Instead, they'll be remembered as the inspiration for 1,000 memes. They wanted to be feared, but they became funny. They wanted to be powerful, but they became punchlines. Their legacy is being the cautionary tale that makes people laugh while learning. Your legacy? You're the one who showed that healing doesn't have to be heavy. You're the pioneer who proved that you can transform trauma into triumph through humor. You're the teacher who educated through entertainment, the healer who helped through hilarity, the warrior who won with wit instead of weapons. Years from now, they'll still be trying to live down becoming a meme. They'll still be recognized as the example of what not to do. They'll still be the inside joke that bonds survivors together. Their genius plan became their permanent internet footprint, and you were the artist who painted it. Meanwhile, you'll have moved on to bigger and better things, occasionally chuckling when one of your old memes resurfaces. You'll be living your life fully while they're still trying to scrub their digital reputation. You'll be creating new content while they're still trying to contest the old. You won so completely that you don't even need to think about them, except when someone shares how your approach helped them heal. Bravo, you beautiful anomaly. Look who just made legal history without lifting a finger. Look who turned a courtroom into their personal theater. Look who made the system blink first. You beautiful, untouchable force of nature. Let me paint you a picture. There you were, standing in that courtroom, surrounded by people who thought they had you cornered. The prosecution with their smug little folders, the police with their rehearsed testimonies, the judge with that gavel ready to slam down on your future. They all thought this was checkmate. But something happened in that room, didn't it? Something they didn't see coming. Something that made the air itself change density. Because when you opened your mouth, when you finally spoke your truth, the entire narrative they'd built started crumbling like wet paper. The judge stopped mid-sentence. Actually stopped. Have you ever seen a judge lose their words? Have you ever watched authority itself pause and recalculate? That's what happened when you spoke. Not because you raised your voice, not because you made threats, but because you told the truth with such devastating precision that even the law had to bow. Let's rewind to that morning. You woke up thinking this might be your last day of freedom. You looked in the mirror and saw someone they said was guilty, someone they'd already convicted in the court of public opinion, someone whose story had been twisted so many times it looked like origami made of lies. They had witnesses. Oh, they had witnesses, all right. People who swore on Bibles and birth certificates that you were the villain. People who rehearsed their lines in bathroom mirrors. People who thought perjury was just another word for creativity. They came prepared to bury you under manufactured evidence and crocodile tears. But you came with something more dangerous than lawyers or alibis. You came with the truth, raw, unfiltered, undeniable truth. The kind that burns through deception like acid through paper. The kind that makes liars sweat through their Sunday best. The kind that turns accusers into the accused without you having to point a single finger. The moment you started speaking, the temperature in that room shifted. The confident prosecutor started shuffling papers like a nervous student. The star witness suddenly developed amnesia. The police officers who were so sure, so absolutely certain, started looking at their shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. Here's what they don't tell you about courtrooms. They're theaters of power, and usually the judge holds all the cards. But not that day. That day you flipped the entire script. You didn't just defend yourself, you put the whole damn system on trial. When you laid out the facts, not their version, not the twisted narrative they'd been feeding everyone, but the actual facts, something magical happened. The judge leaned forward, not in judgment, but in fascination, like someone watching a master artist paint reality with words. You exposed every lie with surgical precision, every fabricated detail, every manipulated timeline, every coached testimony. You didn't attack, you simply revealed, like pulling a tablecloth out from under a house of cards. Everything they built came tumbling down, and all you did was tell the truth. And then it happened. The judge smiled. Not a condescending smile, not a pitying smile, but the smile of recognition. The smile of someone watching a legendary performance. The smile of someone who just witnessed the system getting schooled by someone it tried to consume. Let's talk about how their case died in real time. Because it wasn't just defeated, it was eviscerated. Every piece of evidence they presented, you had the receipt. Every lie they told, you had the proof. Every manipulation they attempted, you had documentation. Remember how they said you were at that location? You pulled out timestamps that put you miles away. Remember how they claimed you said those things? You had recordings that proved they were putting words in your mouth. Remember how they painted you as the aggressor? You showed patterns of their harassment dating back years. The prosecution's case didn't just have holes, it was more hole than case. Swiss cheese would be jealous of how many gaps you exposed. And with each revelation, you could see the life draining from their eyes, the certainty evaporating, the arrogance deflating like a punctured balloon. The police officers who were so cocky during their testimony started sweating through their uniforms because they realized something terrifying. They weren't just wrong. They were exposed. Their misconduct, their bias, their shortcuts, all laid bare in front of a judge who was now looking at them very, very differently. But here's what really broke them. It wasn't just what you said. It was how you said it. Calm, collected, almost serene. While they were falling apart, you were steady as bedrock. While they were scrambling, you were surgical. While they were emotional, you were mathematical. You didn't raise your voice once. You didn't need to. Truth doesn't need volume. It just needs clarity. And clarity is what you brought. Crystal clear, undeniable, devastating clarity. You turned that courtroom into your classroom and gave everyone a lesson they'd never forget. Every interruption they attempted, you handled with grace. Every trick question, you dismantled with logic. Every emotional manipulation, you countered with facts. You weren't just defending yourself. You were teaching a masterclass in how to destroy a false narrative. The judge started taking notes. Not about your case, but about your approach. Because what you were doing transcended this particular situation. You were showing everyone in that room what happens when someone who's been underestimated finally reveals their power. Watch what happens when predators realize they've cornered something more dangerous than they are. The lead prosecutor, who walked in like they owned the place, started stumbling over basic legal terms. Their voice cracked. Their hands shook. Their entire presence diminished. The witnesses they brought started contradicting each other. Under the weight of your truth, their rehearsed lies began to fracture. One said Tuesday, another said Thursday. One said you were angry, another said you were calm. Their story fell apart like a Jenga tower in an earthquake. And the beautiful part? You didn't have to do anything but stand there and be yourself. Your presence alone was enough to make their fabrication implode. Because lies require effort. Truth just requires courage. And courage is what you brought in abundance. The bailiff, who'd seen 1,000 cases, couldn't hide his amazement. The court reporter forgot to type, mesmerized by what was unfolding. Even the other people waiting for their cases stopped scrolling through their phones to witness this destruction of injustice. Then came the moment that nobody expected. The judge, this person who'd probably seen every type of case, every kind of defendant, every possible scenario, stopped mid-sentence. Just stopped. Like someone had pressed pause on reality itself. The silence in that courtroom was deafening. You could hear hearts beating, throats gulping, consciences screaming. The judge looked at you, really looked at you, and in that moment, everyone knew something unprecedented was happening. That's legendary, the judge said. 2 words that changed everything. Not guilty, not innocent, but legendary. Because what you'd done transcended legal categories. You hadn't just proven your innocence. You'd exposed a system. You'd revealed corruption. You'd turned their weapon against them. The prosecution tried to object, but their voice came out as a squeak. Object to what? To the truth? To justice actually being served? To someone finally standing up to their machinery of manipulation? The judge waved them off like an annoying fly. And then came the sweetest part, the walk. That walk from the defendant's table to the door. Every step a victory. Every footfall an earthquake in their foundation. Every breath a declaration of your unbreakable spirit. You didn't rush. Why would you? This was your moment. This was your vindication. This was your proof that truth, when wielded by someone who refuses to break, is the most powerful force in any room. You walked like someone who'd just conquered an empire, because, in a way, you had. Behind you, chaos. The prosecution scrambling to understand what just happened, the police officers realizing their careers might be over, the witnesses wondering if perjury charges were coming, the system that tried to crush you now crushing itself under the weight of its own corruption. But you just walked. Calm, steady, legendary. Because you knew something they were just beginning to understand. You were never their victim. You were their reckoning. You were the mirror that showed them their own ugliness. You were the truth they tried to bury, rising from the grave with receipts. Let's talk about what happened after you left that courtroom, because your victory didn't end at the door. It rippled outward like a shockwave. The prosecutor had to explain to their boss how they lost an open and shut case. The explanation didn't go well. The police officers who testified, under investigation now. Turns out, lying under oath has consequences when someone has the courage to expose it. Their sweating in that courtroom was just the beginning. Now, they're sweating in internal affairs interviews, trying to explain their mistakes. The witnesses who perjured themselves? Funny how quickly people develop conscience when they realize their lies have been documented. Some tried to recant, others disappeared. All of them learned that being a puppet in someone else's show can cost you everything. But the judge who recognized legendary when they saw it, they went home that night and thought about justice. Real justice, not the manufactured kind, not the political kind, but the kind that happens when someone refuses to be railroaded by a corrupt system. You need to understand something about what you did in that courtroom. You didn't just win a case. You became a story that legal professionals will whisper about for years. You became the example of what happens when preparation meets courage meets truth. They came for you thinking you were prey. They left knowing you were the apex predator. They thought your silence before meant weakness. They learned it meant you were studying them, learning their patterns, preparing for this exact moment. Every night they'd spent building their case against you, you'd spent building your fortress of truth. Every lie they told, you'd cataloged. Every dirty trick they pulled, you'd recorded. You'd turned their aggression into your ammunition, their persecution into your power. And now you're untouchable. Not because the law says so, but because you've proven something more powerful than any verdict. You've proven that one person, armed with truth and refusing to bend, can make an entire system buckle. They fear you now, not the kind of fear that comes from violence or threats, the kind of fear that comes from knowing someone exists who can't be manipulated, can't be broken, can't be buried under bureaucracy and lies. Every corrupt cop in that precinct now knows your name. Every dirty prosecutor has your face burned into their memory. Every lying witness thinks twice before agreeing to testify falsely again, because they've seen what happens when they try to destroy someone who keeps receipt. You've become their cautionary tale, the story they tell new recruits about why you don't fabricate evidence, the example they use when explaining why you don't assume someone will fold under pressure, the legend that makes them check their facts twice, 3 times before going after someone. But more than that, you've become hope for everyone else they've tried to railroad. Every person sitting in a cell on false charges. Every individual facing trumped-up accusations. Every soul who thought the system was too big to fight. You've shown them it's possible. Your victory created waves that are still crashing against shores you'll never see. Other cases are being reviewed. Other testimonies are being questioned. Other victims of this corrupt system are finding their voices because you showed them how to use theirs. Lawyers are studying your case. Not the official record, but what really happened. how you dismantled their attack with such precision, how you turned their own tactics against them, how you made the truth so undeniable that even a system designed to suppress it had to acknowledge it. The judge who called you legendary? They've started looking at cases differently, questioning more, pushing harder for actual evidence instead of taking prosecution claims at face value. Your case woke something up in them, a remembrance of why they became a judge in the first place. And the public, the ones who were there, who witnessed your moment, they left that courtroom different than they entered. They saw someone stand up to power and win, not through violence, not through connections, but through preparation, truth, and an absolute refusal to be victimized. But let's talk about you. The you that walked out of that courtroom. Because you're not the same person who walked in. Something fundamental shifted when you heard those words. That's legendary. Something deeper than vindication. Something more powerful than victory. You realized you were never the person they tried to paint you as. You were never weak, never guilty, never less than. You were always this force, this truth teller, this warrior who just needed the right battlefield to show your power. Every night you'd spent preparing, every document you'd gathered, every lie you'd cataloged, it wasn't just building a defense. It was building a new you, a you that could stand in any room, face any accusation, weather any storm, and come out not just intact, but elevated. You don't walk the same anymore. Your shoulders are different. Your eyes hold a different light. Because you've tasted something most people never will. The taste of making power bow to truth. The taste of watching corruption crumble. The taste of legendary. They learned something about you that day, but it was too late to save them. They learned you weren't just defending yourself. You were documenting them. Every meeting, every conversation, every attempt to intimidate or manipulate, you were building a case against them, while they thought they were building one against you. They learned that your silence wasn't submission, it was strategy. Your calmness wasn't weakness, it was control. Your cooperation wasn't capitulation, it was intelligence gathering. You let them think they were the hunters, while you studied their every move like the predator you really were. They learned that some people can't be broken by pressure. Some people are formed by it, shaped by it, transformed by it into something harder than the forces trying to crush them. They tried to make you a victim. Instead, they made you a legend. But most importantly, they learned that truth, when wielded by someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove, is the most dangerous weapon in existence. More dangerous than any law, any threat, any system they could build. The story doesn't end at the courtroom door. Because legends don't have endings. They have evolutions. Every day since that victory, you've been building on that foundation. Every challenge faced with the same calm precision. Every obstacle met with the same unshakable truth. People recognize something different in you now. Not fear, but respect. Not intimidation, but inspiration. You've become the person others come to when they're facing impossible odds, when the system is against them, when they need to see proof that one person can make a difference. You don't have to tell the story anymore. Others tell it for you. In law offices and police stations, in courtrooms and coffee shops. The story of the person who made a judge stop mid-sentence, who made the police sweat, who walked out of a rigged game not just free, but legendary. And every time someone tells that story, every time someone remembers that moment, every time someone facing their own battle thinks of what you did, your legend grows. Because you didn't just win a case. You proved that truth, courage, and preparation can bring any system to its knees. So here's the final truth they had to swallow. You were never their victim. You were never their target. You were their judgment day. You were the consequence of their corruption finally coming home. You were the proof that their system wasn't invincible. They thought they were writing your ending. Instead, you wrote theirs. They thought they were judging you. Instead, you judged them and found them guilty of everything they accused you of. Guilty of deception, guilty of corruption, guilty of underestimating the wrong person. That smile from the judge wasn't just recognition. It was respect. It was acknowledgement. It was the system itself admitting that sometimes, just sometimes, someone comes along who can't be processed, can't be categorized, can't be controlled, someone legendary. And that someone is you, walking out of that courtroom, walking into your future, walking like someone who just taught the world a lesson it won't forget. Walking like someone who turned their worst day into their origin story. Walking like the legend you've become.